So, you think your country has problems? Political arguments, economic worries, questions about who's really in charge? Yeah, join the club. A club that for over 1,000 years had one single massively influential member, the Roman Empire. This is the story of how a tiny, smelly village on the Tiber River became the undisputed boss of the Mediterranean, and then, slowly, spectacularly, forgot how to be a boss. This is the story of greed, power, genius, and really, really bad management decisions. Strap in. Our story starts, as all good stories do, with a wolf adopting some babies. According to legend, these twins, Romulus and Remus, founded Rome in 753 BCE. Romulus promptly killed his brother, which set a lovely precedent for Roman politics. For about 250 years, Rome was ruled by kings. But the last one, Tarquin the Superbly Proud, was such a tyrant that the Romans had a collective meltdown and said, "No more kings." And thus, the Roman Republic was born around 509 BCE. It wasn't a democracy as we know it, but it was a system with checks and balances. The key was the Senate, a body of old, wealthy men who advised the state, and the two consuls, annually elected leaders who could veto each other, because nothing gets done when two bosses can just say no to each other. The Republic's first order of business? Survival. They were surrounded by hostile tribes, so they developed a killer military system, the legion. These guys were disciplined, well-equipped, and could march 30 miles a day in full gear. They were the ancient equivalent of a super soldier, and they spent the next few centuries conquering all of Italy. But now Rome had a taste for conquest, and there was a big, juicy prize across the sea: Carthage. Carthage was a wealthy trading empire. Rome was a land-based agrarian republic. They were destined to be rivals. Cue the Punic Wars, a trilogy of conflicts more epic than any modern movie sequel. It was basically turning a sea battle into a land battle. Genius! Rome won and got Sicily, its first overseas province. Enter Hannibal Barca, the greatest military mind Carthage ever produced and Rome's personal nightmare. To get to Italy, he did the unthinkable. He marched his army, including war elephants, over the Alps. It was a tactical masterpiece. Rome lost maybe 50,000 men in a single day. The city was in panic, but they refused to surrender. Their strategy? Avoid big battles, harass Hannibal, and more importantly, send a young general named Scipio Africanus to attack Carthage itself. Hannibal was forced to return home, where Scipio defeated him at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. Rome won the war, and Carthage was finished as a major power. The Mediterranean was now, effectively, a Roman lake. All this conquering made Rome stinking rich. But the wealth wasn't distributed evenly. It all went to the senatorial class, the patricians. The common folk, the plebeians, and the soldiers were left behind. This led to massive social unrest. Two brothers, the Gracchi, tried to pass land reforms to help the poor. The senators' response? How about we beat them to death in the street? That was the beginning of the end of political norms. The army was no longer a citizen militia loyal to the state. It was now a professional force loyal to its general, who promised them land and plunder. This gave us men like Gaius Marius and Sulla, who used their private armies to fight each other in the first full-blown civil war. Then came the First Triumvirate, an unofficial power-sharing agreement between three men who really, really liked power: Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar. After Crassus died, the deal fell apart. Caesar, after conquering Gaul and writing a best-selling book about it, was a megastar. The Senate, terrified, ordered him to disband his army. He crossed the Rubicon. The die was cast. Caesar won the Civil War, declared himself dictator for life, and started acting like a king. The senators, who hated kings more than anything, decided to express their disapproval with 23 stab wounds. They thought they were saving the Republic. Instead, they sparked another, even worse civil war. The winner of this new civil war was Octavian. He defeated Caesar's assassins and his former ally, Mark Antony, who was busy having a dramatic romance with Cleopatra in Egypt. This was the beginning of the Roman Empire. Augustus was a brilliant administrator. He fixed the roads, built aqueducts, established a fire department, and started the Pax Romana, a 200-year period of peace and prosperity. The 3rd century AD was a complete disaster, the crisis of the 3rd century. It was a revolving door of emperors, most of whom were assassinated by their own troops. There were about 25 emperors in 50 years. The empire nearly collapsed from within, while barbarian tribes and a new Persian empire attacked from without. It didn't last, but one of the successors who reunited the empire was Constantine the Great. He did 2 world-changing things: legalized Christianity, founded a new capital in the East, Constantinople. This basically made the eastern half the new favorite, wealthier, more stable child. The West was left as the aging, struggling parent. The fall of the Western Roman Empire wasn't a single event. It was a slow-motion collapse over more than a century. Think of it as death by 1,000 cuts. Constant civil wars and defending a huge border was expensive. They debased the currency, putting less and less silver in their coins, causing massive inflation. Emperors were weak puppets of the army. The real power was with barbarian generals who led Roman legions. Pressured by the Huns from the east, entire tribes like the Visigoths and Vandals flooded into the empire, sometimes as refugees, sometimes as invaders. By the 5th century, the Western Empire was a hollow shell. It was picked apart. The Vandals sacked Rome itself in 455 AD. Finally, in 476 AD, a barbarian general named Odoacer deposed the last Roman emperor, a boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus. And that was it. No big bang. Just a quiet end to a 1,000-year story. The Eastern Empire, now called the Byzantine Empire, would live on for another 1,000 years. But the era of Rome in the West was over. So why did it fall? There's no simple answer. It wasn't one thing. It was a perfect storm: political corruption, economic insanity, overexpansion, military anarchy, and the sheer exhausting difficulty of holding something so vast together. The Roman Empire shows us the incredible heights humanity can achieve through organization, law, and engineering. But it also shows us that no system is too big to fail. It's a cycle of rise, peak, and decline that every great civilization must face. It rose through grit and fell when it could no longer remember what made it great in the first place. So next time you're worried about the state of the world, just remember, at least you don't have to worry about Visigoths sacking your city or your currency being replaced by lead coins. Probably.